This is the second edition of the About IBD podcast, and this time I've got three lovely women. We all got together in a hotel room and talked. I want to give you everyone's handles so that you can find them after you listen to the show. We have Jamie Weinstein, who blogs at prettyrottenguts.tumblr.com, and you can find her at Twitter at JamieEditor, but you have to spell her name right. Jamie is Jaime. We also have Brooke Abbott, who is the Crazy Creole Mommy, and she blogs at crazycreolemommy.com, and you can find her on Twitter at CRZY Creole Mommy. And last but not least, we have my good friend Christy Stone, otherwise known as Crony Baloney, and she blogs at cronybaloneyibd.com, and you can find her on Twitter at Crony Baloney. In this edition, we talk about the time that you had to tell a partner about your IBD, or in some cases, kind of didn't tell them about IBD until stuff happened. Anyway, it's a great edition. I know you're going to enjoy it, and away we go. And today we're going to talk about a time when you had to tell somebody you were involved with that you had IBD, which it's not an easy thing to do, obviously. I actually avoided it a couple of times, spectacularly avoided it, and just sort of like broke up with people and let it go until I finally met my husband, and then I actually did physically sit down and like actually tell him, and it was fine, and it all worked out. But I have three ladies here with me. We're all in different phases of their life, different phases of their disease, and have had very different experiences on this score. And so I think I first want to hear from Jamie about a time when you had to tell someone about your IBD.
So since my diagnosis, which was in 2005, I've dated quite a few people because we're now in 2017 and I'm still not married, which much is to the detriment of my tiny cousin who just wants to know when I'm going to effing get married. That being said, throughout relationships that I've had since diagnosis, I've always been upfront because I've always feared the fact that I might be doing okay right now, and okay is a relative term to how I was doing at that time. But if I ever hit a bad spell of health, were they the type of person who was going to stick around? And so I felt that honesty was going to be the best policy, because if you tell someone that you have this chronic disease and you don't know what the future holds, but right now you're doing pretty well, so awesome, and they're like, I don't think I want to invest time in you, cool, there's the door, bye-bye. So I've been pretty honest with the people that I've dated in this time, and I would say that 90% of the gentlemen who I did date, once I told them I had Crohn's disease, actually hit the internet and started looking things up, which is good and it's bad, but they also were smart enough to say, okay, so I read this online, what does this mean? Is this true? And then most of the time I would have to do some information correction. So, it worked out, but then I also had the overly sensitive gentleman caller who wanted to go above and beyond for everything. So when I came over to his house to watch a movie, there was water, there was vitamin water, there was Sprite. There was no more Diet Coke in his house because he read that Diet Coke was bad for people with GI disease. I really like Diet Coke, so that made me sad when he said that, because did that mean that I was going to have to fight him on this if I got Diet Coke when we went out? So there were a lot of things that I felt like, okay, he knows too much, but not the right things, and this could get complicated. Luckily, we broke up. So the relationship that I'm in now is closing in on 3 years, and we dated quite a few years ago, and it never came up because we weren't together long enough for me to feel like this was a conversation that needed to be had. But when we did get back together, my health was obviously in a different state than it ever was before, and I was quite ill. I was doing better than I was the year before, but I've been in this current flare since 2012. So when we met in 2000, or re-met in 2014, I told him up front, I am not working right now. I'm able to freelance. I'm on disability. I don't know when I'm going to be able to get my life back together. The beautiful house that you once visited is no longer mine. I had to give it up. And I live at home with my parents, so I hope you like old people. And his response to me was, everybody has their thing. And his thing happens to be that his mother is disabled and he takes care of her. So I picked a good egg.
So when you were dating people, was this, how far along did you get with people before you decided that they needed, to know, basically? First date, fifth date, did you feel them out beforehand and see how it went?
Most of the time, before I would actually agree to go on an official date with someone, I wanted to get to know them because I wanted to know their character. So I friend zoned a lot of dudes back
Mm-hmm.
in the day, and very rarely did I pull them out of the friend zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I feel like dating has evolved.
It totally
and
is.
it's not, even when I was younger and dating,
Yeah.
it wasn't that a man called you up and then he came to your house and he picked you up and this was a date. You usually met through mutual friends, things like
Yes.
that, and then it just sort of went from there, and then y'all kind of look at each other one day and go, are we dating? Like, is this happening right now?
Yeah.
So it almost makes it a little bit more difficult to, like, sort of sit down and have that conversation.
It does, and especially when online dating comes into play, because I mean, who in this day and age really hasn't done online dating? And so at one point, I had in my profile, straight up, I have Crohn's disease, and I would put it somewhere, and I would be creative with it. And if they actually messaged me back regarding the Crohn's disease, then I knew that they read my profile and they were still interested in getting to know me. And then I felt like, okay, due diligence has been performed.
Right, you've done what you needed
Mm-hmm.
to do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like you can ever sort of adequately prepare someone for the things that could happen unless they've been through it with a family member, for instance. But at least then, like you said, you did,
Mm-hmm.
You put it out there, you made it known, so there it is. Here I am in all my glory, and Crohn's disease comes with it.
Yeah, my IBD doesn't define me. It's usually it's a small part of my life.
Yeah.
It happened to take up a larger chunk of life over the last few years,
Right.
but also the advocacy work that I've been doing plays into it. So it was also a good icebreaker to say this.
Right.
When I travel so much, it's not because I'm super healthy and I'm going on vacation. I'm doing this work to help others with the same issue. And that was also a good way for me to segue into telling Matt about this. But going back to what you said, how dating has evolved, at one point I thought I was dating one for 6 months, and then we were at a bar with a bunch of friends one day, and this woman comes on over and she's like, "Are you guys together?" And he says, "We're just hanging out." News to me.
Mm-hmm.
And end of him.
Yeah, because I remember at certain points in relationships, especially when you're in college, and things were on the spectrum of, there were men that would be like, would you like to go on a date?
Yes.
And then there were just like, dorm room hookups, and it was like, everything was in between. I do remember that there was a couple of times where it was like, you finally, and usually actually it was usually another woman that would say, are you guys exclusive? Or, and then you'd look at each other and go, oh man, like we haven't even figured this out. And then you'd sort of be forced into that situation and have to make those decisions.
Yep.
So.
And I value myself, so if you can't say that we're together to a complete stranger, let alone the people that we're out with,
right,
there's a problem, and bye-bye.
That's a big issue. That's like a whole other podcast we can do.
For real.
So, Brooke,
yes,
you were married, right, at the time?
No.
When you weren't married?
No.
Okay.
No, not yet.
So what was happening?
We were dating.
You were dating?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was just diagnosed.
Okay.
I was recently diagnosed. I was diagnosed in February. I met him in June. Met him in May, June. And I did not know enough about the disease to say, hey, I've got this, and this is what it's going to be like, and this is what I've been experiencing, and it's going to be okay. I knew that I was taking these pills, and that in my mind, if I took these pills, then I wouldn't get sick, so I didn't really need to explain it. I also worked in Hollywood at the time, so I didn't know who knew who and who knew what, so I wasn't going to give any information up freely. It wasn't until we got serious around, because we started dating, then we stopped dating, and then we started dating again, very, very briefly. In October, I started feeling sick, and he was over at the house, actually, and I was always tired, like I was just always falling asleep, and he said to me, I always come over here to watch a movie with you, and you fall asleep. What is the deal? Am I boring? And I was like, no, I'm just really tired. I think it's my disease. And he looked at me, and I was like, it's not that kind of disease. You can't catch it. And I told him that I had ulcerative colitis. He didn't know what that meant. And really, neither did I.
Who does?
Yeah. And I just said, you know, this is so terrible to say, but this is what I knew of. I was like, I go to the bathroom a lot. Sometimes I bleed, sometimes I don't. It hurts when I go to the bathroom. No big deal. Hindsight. We should have been more proactive in finding out about my disease, because, you know, within a year we were talking about children, and then we had a child, and then I was extremely sick, and then sicker, and then sicker, and sicker, and sicker, and, you know, he didn't know how to explain it to his friends. And because we didn't know exactly what the disease was, it became embarrassing to tell your friends, because nobody wants to tell their frat brothers that, you know, their lady's stuck in the bathroom for an hour because she can't handle her margarita. And that's kind of where his mindset was. That's what he thought was going on, that I was going out too much, or that I was maybe eating the wrong food, and I thought the same thing, because I just didn't have the information. And I was too sick at that time to really do my due diligence and figure it out. Plus I had a newborn, and it was just all too much. So, yeah, that was interesting. But now I'm single. And now everybody knows that I have this disease, because I'm very vocal about it. And I had been seeing someone recently for a few months, and I met him because I was so vocal. He does not have IBD. He does not know very much about IBD. But he right when we decided that we were going to start kind of dating, he said, so you never really told me what you had. I was like, what? Huh?
Yeah.
You don't read
you
my
know?
blog? Like, you don't, he's like, no,
Does
I'm
everybody
just,
know?
he's like, I want to get the speech. What's the speech that you gave everybody else? I want the speech too.
Oh.
I'm like, I have IBD.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm not ashamed. He's like, yeah, that's what I wanted. That was the speech I wanted. So, you know, it was nice to have someone who was not familiar, but was willing to be open about it, and would joke about it, and ask questions, and want to know more about it, instead of being so scared of it. I think that my son's father was so concerned, because that was the rest of our lives. And because when we first started dating, I didn't know a lot about it, I gave him the impression that this was something that I could control myself, and that it really wasn't that big of a deal. So when it became a big deal, it was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this to us? What's going on? How do we fix it? Plus, you know, we were young, and we had a baby, and that was a lot to deal with. You know, that was a lot. So dating with IBD now is a lot better, because I understand it, and it's more empowering, and I don't feel scared. And I think having had someone leave me because of my IBD changed my perspective on people and dating. And I think that I value relationships and friendships more than I did before.
Right.
Agreed.
The ones that you have, that you know, the people that are with you now have been with you through the worst.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Right.
And most people I know were diagnosed years before they ever met someone.
Yes.
You know, that they were going to marry.
Yes.
So.
Right, but like.
Or they were diagnosed after they were married.
Yes.
And they went through it together.
Right. Or not.
Or
in
not.
Some cases.
Right.
But I understand. I empathize with your experience because I also felt the same, in that I just take this medication. It's not such a big deal, and moving on. La la la. I just have to make sure I don't get colon cancer, and that was kind of how it was. Not really ever truly realizing how bad it could get. So it wasn't a purposeful minimalization of it. It was that it just literally had no conception.
No. And when they actually gave me the J-pouch, the surgical option, the first thing my son's father said to me, this was months after, he said, "Why didn't you get that?
Yeah.
Why didn't you get that when we were together? Why didn't you said that you had to wait till you were 40. And I'm like, that's because that's what I was told.
Yeah.
That around the time that I was 40, I would probably have my colon removed.
Yeah.
Or it's a good idea to do that because of colon cancer.
Right.
Had I known that this was an option before, it would have happened immediately because I was that sick. Because I would have known that the options were kind of minimal and things were happening really fast. And I didn't realize how sick I was because I didn't know what was happening to me.
No, because it's insidious.
Yeah. And, yeah. So, I don't know. The whole dating with the J-pouch thing, it's interesting. It is really interesting because I'm from LA, so everybody's like health conscious, you know? And so when I walk in and we're on the date and they're all like, oh, I'm going to have a, vegan quinoa and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, can I have my white rice, please?
I know, right? I know.
And my white bread.
I'm going to carve it up.
Yeah, I'm just going to carve it up.
And then I'm going to go, because I'm running a marathon tomorrow.
Right.
You know, that's what's happening.
Well, yeah. And so I actually do try to explain that
yeah.
to people. Like, my body is running a marathon inside, and I need all the salt and energy I can possibly get.
Right. And the kale is right out.
Can't do the kale salad with the extra quinoa and all the raw beets in the world.
No,
like I can't
do it.
No, quinoa is the devil. It is the devil, and the brown rice on top of the quinoa, like that. I can't personally. I can't do it.
Can't eat like that.
No, so it's a little interesting, and. I don't know, I guess maybe my advocacy has kind of freed me up because I don't feel like a prisoner of my disease. When I was working in Hollywood and I was dating and I felt like I couldn't tell anybody, I felt trapped.
Like a prison.
Yeah, now everybody's like, oh, yeah, and they Google, you go, you meet up, hey, hi, how you doing, you're cute, oh, yeah, can I have your number, sure, no problem, and you talk, and, oh, let me get your name, and then, of course, as soon as you turn around, they Google you, and as soon as they Google me, it's like, crazy Creole mom, she's got a kid and no colon, way to go, we won the lottery.
And now you have green hair, so.
And now I have green hair, it's teal, actually.
Teal.
It's got a little blue highlights.
I know a lot of people tell me I have red hair, and I'm like, oh, it's purple, actually.
Yeah.
So.
Color correct.
Yeah. Well, we suffer for it, so let's get it right, y'all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but then, now, Christy, you were married.
Right. So I've been messaging my husband throughout this because my recollection, it can always use a little help. And I wanted to, when I spoke, to make it as accurate as possible, representing both of our experiences. I was 17 and had, at the time, I had been diagnosed with ulcerative colitis and had a J-pouch placement. And at the time that I met my husband, I had only just brand spanking new had that reversed. And back in the olden days, I'm talking 1994, is back when they told you that was it, you're done, you're better, bye.
Yes, you're cured.
No medication, no further monitoring of a disease process, you were cured. So I was finally healthy enough to have my first job, and that's where I met my husband. So I was messaging him like, you know, I think when I decided he was neat and he decided I was neat, the soonest recollection of any kind of disclosure about anything, because in my mind that door was shut and I was moving forward, was like when we were fooling around and saw my scars, and I tried to explain my scars to him.
Yeah.
And then he was cool with that. He's like, yeah, neat.
Oh my gosh, you just like brought back memories of that. Oh my gosh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So
somebody's seeing your scars and you never telling them anything, and all of a sudden they saw your scars, and yeah,
right, because in my mind I didn't have a disease.
Yeah.
And that was really a thing I believed, and I had no reason not to believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'd been dating for a period of time, and I didn't realize I was as sick as I was, and he didn't either. And it wasn't worth mentioning really until I fainted, or I passed out in my apartment that I had at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up in the hospital for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so from then, it's kind of like, well, maybe this is just a thing. It's a side effect of surgery, but we never really ever talked about it being a continuation of a disease process.
Mm-hmm.
Until we didn't know how far deep we were in until after I'd had my daughter. We went through infertility issues, never thought that was related. We went through like tons of hospitalizations, surgeries between, to open up strictures, because the rectal anal area had to be redone, and that was closing in.
Mm-hmm.
And still, this is just part of managing side effects from the surgery. So when I had my daughter, that pregnancy was exciting, and we still didn't realize how bad it was until that fistula,
Mm-hmm.
and then all the complications that went along with that. Then I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and here I was my daughter was 3 months old, and I had surgery for my ostomy again, or a second ostomy surgery, and then and I had that for a year, and that they went, you're really sick, you have been for a long time, I suspect this has been going on all along, you were misdiagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a matter of, we were both in it in the deep end together real fast.
Mm-hmm.
My husband and I managed that in different ways. I went back into heads down, let's do this mode, because at that time when I had fully switched from being a person who lived largely for themselves, which you do before you have kids.
Yes.
And then once you have a child, life is a lot not having anything to do with you.
Yeah.
And so I was a dragon. They were offering me Remicade back then. They could have worked on their salesmanship, because my answer was a resounding no.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because back then also they don't have the studies maybe that they have now.
What year was that then?
Grace was born in 2005.
Okay.
So there was an issue with, can you breastfeed?
Yeah.
Is it, all this questions going on back in the elder years.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
know more now. And I had said no. Looking back, I would have done differently.
Yeah.
So I ended up on a different medication and stayed on it for as long as I physically could. But the issues were that my health consequences were severe and long-standing, and it was something I had to do with him. He realized how bad it was only really when talking to coworkers who
Mm-hmm.
happened to describe their situation.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh, wait a minute. I think I know what's, so in stages. it was a tricky thing for him. But at first, I was a dumb kid.
Yeah.
And I thought he was cute, and he was dumb right with me.
Yeah.
And it was the first inkling of showing him anything was scars.
Right.
Which we thought was a done deal.
Yeah.
So
You thought you were going to
Yeah.
be fine, not knowing.
I had no idea.
Obviously, not knowing that you had Crohn's, that you were misdiagnosed.
It was, we had no idea how slippery it was and that it would sneak into every single crack in our life.
Yeah.
We can look at every major point in our life and our marriage together, and Crohn's disease plays a part in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I'd like to say that we would still be together, but I don't know that he, knowing all the, because it's been hard on him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's gone through hard things that I, being heads down about it, and then I complete that task and then I move forward. I don't know that anyone just sight unseen will meet someone and go, yeah, I'm all about that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm on board with this horrible thing that's
Right.
going to happen. And I think most people, those of us that are the sixth, quote unquote, sixth spouse, we wouldn't want it to be reversed. Like being the
Right.
well spouse is
So
way
helpless.
worse.
Yes. And so he he's very generous and honest, and we have had our discussions, and no, he was just messaging me some really sweet things about it, but because we had the basis of friendship that I think we got through.
Right.
And we've been married, this summer will be 20 years.
Really?
I know, right?
Oh my gosh.
If I had a little champagne popper thing, I'd be like, here.
Nice.
But yeah, so
Wow.
we kind of went through the ringer together, though.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, and then he's got his own version of stuff, which he may share with you someday. He's already said he would do that.
Really? He would?
Yes.
Sight unseen. Oof. Man, I just got people volunteering to spill their guts all over the place.
Falling
It's
on your
amazing.
Well, he has a really interesting perspective because, I was overdosed in a hospital and they had to do the crash cart thing.
Yeah.
And he witnessed that.
Yeah.
That first year after my daughter was born and all that time I spent in the hospital, and she even learned to walk in the hospital,
Yeah.
which I am part proud of and part ashamed of that fact,
Yeah.
depending on the day.
Yeah.
He was
That's
the
with
one
most
that
things.
As
with
I
kids.
think
Right?
that's kid when you're a mom with a disease, it's like you literally spend one day feeling like I'm Superwoman, and the next day you're like, oh my god, I suck.
Yeah. But it was his fingers that she was hanging on to walking
Yeah.
through the hospital around and around and around.
Yeah.
So he he was always solid when I was not.
Right. And I always say marriage is not 50-50.
No.
Marriage is 90-10. And sometimes you're the 90 and sometimes you're the 10.
Yes, I equate it to,
Oh my God.
those
I
helium
so-
balloons, and then they have that little thing at the bottom
Yeah.
Mhm.
that keeps it on the earth.
Yeah.
So we take turns being the
Being the
balloon.
anchor.
Yes.
Yeah, being the
And the
Yeah,
anchor.
yes.
Yeah. You absolutely have to look at it
It's
that way.
it's so crazy because I was told that, during that time that I wasn't doing my part,
Yeah.
and that always sticks with me.
Yeah.
I mean, we're fine now and we're friends and we've always been friends. I think that was I think that was the hardest part for both of us,
Mm-hmm.
was losing that
A
friendship
friend.
because we were very, very close.
Yeah.
But, I look at other people and how things happen. I watch my grandparents, and this guy that I was seeing a while ago, his father had Parkinson's, and his mother took care of him for a very long time.
Yeah.
My grandmother took care of my grandfather for a while. I look at my great aunt right now. She's taking care of her husband. My uncle has Parkinson's. She's been helping him out. This is just what happens,
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's like that for a while, and sometimes it's not.
Right.
And it switches. And I think that's something that, you know, you have to take into consideration, that also that not everybody can handle that.
Not everybody
Yes.
can handle it,
And that's
the
okay.
community is rife with people who have struggled with that and have lost their partners
Yeah,
because
it's-
of what has gone on.
and it's tough.
And it is tough, and you know, it can be easy to just place blame, but when you are young and you get married and you are thinking you're going to have this life,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, wow, does that take a wrong turn
turn.
on the way to Albuquerque,
Yeah.
and it's not what you signed up for necessarily.
Yeah.
So,
There are times when, and I spoke to him about it, where he didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. This is not the relationship that either of us had envisioned.
mhm,
I felt like a failure.
mhm,
He felt like he was a failure because he didn't know what to do either.
Yeah.
And so that's just one of those cracks that it seeps into.
Yeah. Yeah. But you're either going to sink or swim.
Yeah.
You know. And sad part is some people just, they can't handle it.
Right.
You know. And that's tough.
It
It's
is
really
tough.
tough.
But it's better too, I think, to recognize it and move on. Everybody deserves to carve out the life for themselves that
Yeah,
that they need
want.
to have.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you wouldn't, if you know, somebody really can't be there for you, and we all deserve partners that can be that 90 when we need them to be the 90.
Yeah.
You know, because us here, when we're the 90, man, we're out, we're making stuff happen. You know,
Dude. Dude.
we're rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
So,
But when you hit that, you know, that 10%.
when you're at that 10,
it's not easy.
no, you need somebody who's going to be there with you.
Yeah.
So, all right, we're nearing the end of our time, but I just want to get everybody real quick to say your internet handles so that you can be found when people want to talk to you more about your experience. So, Christy.
Okay, I'm Christy Stone at Crony Baloney on Twitter.
I'm
Brooke.
I'm Brooke Abbott at crazycreolemommy.com.
Jamie.
And I'm Jamie from, I'm on Twitter at Jamie Editor. And you have to spell Jamie like Jaime because I can't make anything easy.
And you have to fix the autocorrect, as I
Yes.
have to do about 5 times a day.
Absolutely.
So, and of course, there's me, your host. You can find me on the interwebs at About IBD. Just Google. Just use the Google.
Use
You'll
the
find
Google.
us on the electric machine with the Googles. So, thanks everybody. This was an amazing conversation. And I'm glad that you're here with me in the same room. And I hope we get to do it again.
Yay!
Thanks.